Hi everyone, I'm Samantha O'Brien. I will just get my panellists to put their hand up so we know who, you probably know who they are, but let's just make sure. Katrina,
Hi,
Demir, and Carolyn. I just heard the previous session call themselves the Barocca session. One of my panellists, I won't name them, was talking about a fillet of fish they consumed last night. We're not going to call ourselves a fillet of fish session, maybe the bacon session. So welcome to the bacon panel session. And the topic you can see is the real value of payments. So let's get going. We've only got half an hour and maybe we'll give ourselves some time for questions if we can. Just the concept of value can manifest in many different ways, and kind of like art in a way, sometimes in the eye of the beholder. Value can be because something's rare, because something's got utility, because something's important, and for a product or service, value could be because it enhances your own products or services, saves you money, makes you money, lots of different ways of kind of coming at what value is. So for a start, I thought I'd ask our panellists from their perspective what they thought the value in payments was and to who. Maybe Carolyn, you can kick that off.
Yeah, I would love to. So the value of payments for me and why I've been in payments for so long, and I'm pretty obsessed, a bit of a payment nerd, is that I have a belief that we are heading into a world that is a consumption-based contextual commerce experience. So if you think about the subscription economy and consumer behaviour, what's driving the uptake in this subscription economy is that people don't want to pay for things they're not using. People want to pay based on their consumption. They want to do that in the context of everyday living, in their everyday activity. And the only way we can really create this kind of passive payment environment or micro-payment environment is to make the payments frictionless and have them disappear and have it in a safe, controlling way for consumers. So if you think about assisted living and taking those binary tasks out of my day-to-day, my fridge will be able to order my groceries from me, my car insurance will go up when my kids get in, when they get out of the car insurance will go down, the car will deliver a parcel for me while I'm at work. You know, if I walk past the television and there's an outfit that I want, I'll be able to talk to the television and the Iconic will send it the next day. I'll pay for energy as I use it, I'll pay for media as I use it, and everything else. So for me, the real value in payments is that assisted living, bringing that rich quality time back into my life and taking away those binary tasks and decisions around payments and not paying for what I don't use.
Thanks, Carolyn. Demir, what about you? What's your take on the real value of payments?
I would like to extend on what Caroline said. I look at it a little bit different. If I think about it purely from a consumer's point of view, I think we're in a really exciting time at the moment. We've got this great intersection of having all of this range of different kind of capabilities when it comes to payments, and also finally we've got this incredibly rich set of data as well. And what we're seeing and what the world of kind of possibilities tomorrow will be is that finally these two things are not going to be done in isolation. So you're not going to be doing data in a separate exercise to executing an actual payment. When you broker a payment experience, you're going to be brokering the data and the payment itself. And the moment you've got two, all of a sudden you've got a continual stream to real-time data access, and you've got the ability to execute payments as well. And we pay too in real time also. And I think combining those two things all of a sudden really changes the actual dynamic. If you think about it from a consumer's point of view, bringing that context into the world of payments means that if we take something as archaic as direct debits, and they've stood the test of time, but if you think about them, one thing that I was always kind of amazed is that once they're set up on the 20th of every month, they're just going to blindly take money out, unbeknown to whether you have sufficient funds, whether you have income that's going to arrive, whether it is even appropriate to actually take the money or not. But with data and that overlay of the context, all of a sudden we can determine when is the best time to actually take the actual funds out. We can determine whether this individual, if they are in a repayment plan, whether they can afford it. And if they can't, then let's kind of automatically put them on a repayment plan that'll help them kind of ease and clear their debts as well. So I think really all of this, what this is going to provide is a brand new kind of category of payment services, particularly in that kind of passive space. So no more will we be required to surface something in front of a consumer and require them to kind of push buttons. It'll be a one-time setup. And as our behaviours change, as the context of data, as things change in our life, we'll be able to use those trigger points to initiate payments.
Thanks, Demir. And Katrina, Demir kind of mentioned kind of value being around customisation and context, and part of that being kind of speed and agility. Kind of what's your take on real value? Is that where it's at, or is there more to it?
So I kind of start with what payments are really about. I try to explain to my kids. They say, "Mum, what do you do?" I say, "I make money move really fast." And I think actually payments is really about the outcome of an action that we do. So it's, it's because I want to purchase a good, it's because I want that service, it's because I want electricity to power my house, and it's really the outcome of those decisions. And I think value in payments will come when we make those kind of processes as seamless as possible and better, as Demir was saying. And I think part of that is kind of the customisation, taking some of the friction away from what we see today, and making that a bit more seamless. And I think we're kind of on the cusp of seeing some real change as it relates to payments here in Australia, because of new capability that will make them not just fast, because I think fast has kind of become the new normal. It's like, well, what do you mean it's not fast? I mean, what do you mean I have to wait 2 days? I mean, I think it's about making them better, making them better from a data perspective in terms of the data that can go with that from a reconciliation, better from a fraud and a safety perspective. How do we protect consumers and merchants and other people involved in that payment process? How do we make actually the process itself more efficient? So if I'm a business and I want to make my payroll run or do my supplier payments, how do I do that more efficiently, and so I can get paid faster, or I can pay someone else faster? And the fact that it's always available as well. So, kind of the concept of 24/7.
Can I just add something to that? And it's something that I hear Demir say often, which is data-driven payments, which is kind of the preface of Basic's whole piece. And I know we say that real-time payments it's going to be BAU, like it's we're all drinking the same Kool-Aid, so we completely get it. But I think the additional benefit in the real-time payment piece, coupled with the data, means that the metadata that comes across and the access to the information within that customer's funding source, so their bank account, actually allows them to make frictionless in-the-moment purchase decisions based on their own data. So we're actually giving them insights in the moment in a frictionless way to make financial decisions and empowerment. So I think the real-time thing, it's BAU, but it's game-changing for the data that can come across.
And I think it's not just the data they get with the payment in terms of what they can do with that, but I think it's also knowing immediately the outcome of a payment. It's the certainty. It's knowing that payment was successful, not having to wait 2 days to actually know there was a problem, and now I've got to have an army of people to manually try and fix that. So I think it's about that kind of real-time kind of notification and the outcome and the certainty as well, and that's when we'll start to see some real efficiency gains.
Thanks, guys. And look, it's exciting. The speed and agility and kind of customisation is kind of really exciting. And I mean, I'm sorry here, my lawyer, so I have to bring a little bit of the kind of negative into play here. But let's, with every product and service, kind of there's a risk around, the customer experience. And so I guess, just want to kind of understand from you guys, and the customers here also, they're businesses and consumers. So there's a different kind of customer set as well in terms of stakeholders that we've got to get this right for. Interested in your perspective, maybe kind of just come back to you, Katrina, about whether the correct settings are in place to kind of increase the incidence of use and kind of avoid erosion of confidence of the payment sector.
I mean, I think it's always a fine balance between how do you kind of deliver a better customer experience, but how do you also ensure there's sufficient safeguards and kind of protections in place as well. And, sometimes you don't get that balance right, and sometimes it's too skewed one way or the other. But I think sort of as an industry, we're really focused on how do we make payments better and safer for consumers and businesses. And so by being able to do things like, for a pay-to authorisation, having it in channel, and I'm actually authenticating myself when I have to do that within my banking channel, using capabilities like Pay ID where I can actually see who I'm paying before I make that payment. I hate making a payment using a BSB account number now. It just drives me insane because I'm like, did I get the numbers right? Okay, let me check it again. It takes me about 10 minutes and it's just like, and then you still don't know and you don't even know if it's gone through. So I think it's really about how can we ensure that we're doing everything we can to help protect both consumers and businesses to make it better. And I think that's an ongoing journey as well. I don't think we're there. I think it'll continue to be something we have to focus on because, certainly, some of the scammers are getting much better at that, and it's a constant kind of battle. But I think it's really about how we make sure there's that right balance, because you do need to have safeguards in place. I mean, things like if you're actually touching money moving people's money around in real time, then yes, you probably need to have some sort of regulatory standing, I think, in terms of to make sure that you are, kind of fit for purpose for that.
Yeah, and look, I'll come to you, Demir. I've got a question for you, Carolyn, but I'll come to you, Demir, first on that, because you spoke about kind of the value of data, and I guess this is where there really is a kind of bit of a concern, potential for concern kind of in end users, right, about kind of security and use of their information. Do you think we've gone far enough in terms of the measures that will give that confidence? Is there more to do? And kind of what are the measures that are in place now?
Yeah, look, I think so one thing to kind of note on, both from a payment and both from a data perspective, with the new Pay to capability and with, from a data perspective, for the wonderful work being delivered through the CDR program itself, is that both of these technological solutions acknowledge whether it's authorization or whether it's a consent, they're actually integral and part of that network and execution as well. So it's not like it was put onto the side, it was actually brought right to the beginning, and it underpins the entire data exchange or the entire kind of like payment setup. The part that I'm kind of really excited by, and I think what we've done really well as an actual nation, is the CDR. So the whole kind of mandate around kind of consumer data rights. One of the parts that I love, particularly as a technologist, is that even from a legal element, just the way the framework is set out, I think we've struck a really good kind of balance between commercially what we want to be able to do with the data and also how do we protect the consumer as well. And if you look at the way we exchange data at the moment, for the little checkbox, I approve, and all of a sudden your data is getting sucked out and going kind of everywhere. CDR addresses that head on. So the entire kind of concept around it is like, let's put it right in front of the consumer. We acknowledge that there's 4 key elements in terms of a consent. What is the purpose? What is the data that you need? What is the time period? And who you're going to share it with? And I think that that's kind of critical and it forms the contractual basis of when interacting with this. The only thing that I'll kind of say is that, but because we are introducing these new concepts, the one part that I can foresee being a little bit challenging is that we've got Pay to MPP with its authorization framework, and then we've got data with a separate consent framework, but there's one consumer. So, and it's one interaction. So how are we going to bring that together underneath the one thing? I think that's going to be our challenge.
Oh, that takes me to kind of the question I had for you, Carolyn, in terms of like, yes, the protections are all there, kind of, yes, we've got this kind of exciting new speed and agility. Are there some consumers that you're going to leave behind? I'm thinking about my parents and just talking about, checks were the problem. Checks were the things I hate to do. Now we hate doing BPay, but my parents would probably still prefer to write a check. So are we going to are those types of consumers going to be kind of there to take up this innovation?
It's something we think about that a lot. So even though Zepto is not a B2C brand, we empower other payment companies and merchants to deliver the experiences. We do play a role in offering what we believe is best practice when it comes to consent and that payment piece itself. So we did some research last year around 2 key areas, one being how consumers feel about open banking, and in particular Pay2, how they felt about Pay2 as a new payment mechanic. And there was a lot of resistance at the start of all of these surveys around how people were feeling about Big Brother and my data and what are they going to use it for, and is it going to affect my credit scores and who has access to the data. But as you talk through the actual use cases of what the data will allow you to deliver, so financial literacy, do you really understand what you're spending? Can it help originate you in a mobile app or in a financial situation so you don't have to complete all the forms again and do all these pieces again? And then for Pay2, wouldn't you like to know the money's gone immediately and be able to go into your banking app and actually pause an agreement with your gym, or move an agreement, or restart an agreement, or cancel a relationship you don't want to continue having? So when you actually took them through the use cases and didn't tell them how they were being powered, their sentiment turned dramatically. They want the convenience that comes with it. And I think there'll be an inflection point, as there was with tokenising credit cards, where people then think, you know what, for the convenience, I'm happy to allow that person to have access to my data or access to my funding source. And just like with credit card tokenisation, just like with wallet penetration and adding funding sources into apps like the Iconic and PayPal and so on, it just naturally progresses over time. And I try to explain it to my dad by saying his favourite store is eBay. And I say, when you purchase from eBay, you don't have to put your details in again anymore, do you? It just knows who you are and puts the payment in where you want it to be. And he said, yeah. I said, that's because they've stored your data. This is no different to that. It's serving you a purpose. So, yeah.
I think I might jump in. I think what's really important is about giving consumers visibility and control over their data, over their payments, and them feeling that I've actually got power, that if, I'm not comfortable now that that's how my data's being used, or that, I'm paying for this service, I can actually do something about it. So it's kind of empowering them as well, I think, is really important as part of this journey. And I think there's also, an important role around kind of informing and educating as well, because, it is change and that takes a little bit of time, but I think, when you kind of work through that process with people, they see the benefits.
I think, sorry, I'm getting so excited. I think with the big billers in particular, where there's a lot of direct debit penetration today and BPay and things like that, though that particular vertical is ripe for disruption with real-time payments, not only because of the real-time payment mechanic itself, but also the fact that those industries are diversifying, they are becoming more consumption-based, and they do need that data to come through to serve their customers better. And I think, if one or two of these big billers that have 4 to 5 million Australians using them, once they turn on Pay 2 or adopt an open banking strategy, then you've converted a fifth of Australia overnight. Once that starts to happen and it starts to penetrate more and more, it'll just become every day.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that kind of there is a little bit of a leap of faith. It's a kind of smaller leap for some and a bigger leap for others, and I guess there's that combination of kind of trust that you can build through kind of communication, information, kind of the regulatory settings and just how things work. And I guess things work smoothly in the beginning. There aren't any kind of consequences, negative consequences. That's going to improve take-up and confidence in the system. So
QR codes are a really good example of that,
Very
right? I'm the Jerry Harvey of QR codes. So back when I was at Braintree, someone was talking to me about QR codes, and I was like, that is never going to fly. That's ridiculous. Who's going to use that? And then we move into, then they started to get adoption, particularly throughout Asia, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden, my dad's like the QR whiz.
Yeah.
This is how it will happen.
yeah, no, totally agree. So let's kind of look a little bit to the future and what's to come. And I guess maybe I'll come back to you, Carol, and recognising kind of the steep innovation curve of this industry. What might kind of value look like in the future for payments?
Yeah, so for me, it goes back to the core of that assisted living piece. And, for the first time, bank account, thanks to Pay 2 and open data globally, gets to swim in the lane of credit card schemes. And at the end of the day, there's no more accessible funding source globally than a bank account. Not everyone has access to a Visa or a MasterCard or Amex. Not everyone has access to a PayPal wallet. So from a customer penetration standpoint, and just with the rate of open data globally, with 58 countries now maturing with open data, that is the most reliable and robust funding source and information source that we have. And so I see a world in a couple of years that is that assisted world. That's the world I want to live in, where those micropayments are happening in my life every day with my control. And I see the death of cards. I actually don't see a place for credit cards in that world.
I love assisted living. I can't. I need all the assistance I can get. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And we'll go to you kind of on that topic that Carolyn touched on, Demir, because obviously kind of there's a potential, not just a potential. There's a certainty of future disruption kind of as the industry innovates. So how could that impact, do you think, on the more traditional players?
Yeah, look, I think what we've from a technological standpoint, what's been happening over time is that we've taken this black box called a bank that is able to facilitate payments, is able to store funds, that is able to give us credit, and so forth. And what we've been doing gradually is adding API by API. So all of this infrastructure that they've always had is now accessible programmatically. Traditionally, they didn't have that capability, so we would have to rely on other schemes and other networks. But it also means that we're really kind of wedged into the technology and the platform and the protocols. We've abundance of API services for both data and payment execution, with the capabilities to be able to execute real-time payments and also being able to acquire data. All of a sudden, it becomes less relevant around the technology of the platform that you're using, and it's more about we get closer to the value of what we're trying to build. So no more of that is like, you have to do it this way, you've got choice now. And I think that, and each one of them has something to offer that's kind of quite unique. And there's no doubt about it that there were definitely some deficiencies from a banking perspective of the services that we're able to provide that maybe force us to some other kind of protocol, but now they can compete just the same like we're in that region. So I think looking at it from that point of view, what we're kind of seeing is that less relevant about whether I'm using cards or bank, I just want payments. Less relevant around whether I'm using, how do I acquire data? Is it going to be for here or this? I've got the APIs for it. And just a more kind of, from an efficiency point of view, enables us as an industry to focus on the key value.
So Katrina, the NPP is a great example of collaborative innovation. What do you see in the future in context of kind of platform and product innovation?
I'm really excited, I think, about what the next couple of years is going to bring. I mean, I think with Pay2 and the delivery of that, and there's a lot of people across the industry, some of whom are here today, who have played a really important role in that to bring it to life, because it has been a true collaboration. I mean, it's involved over 100 organisations doing work with their payer customers and their banking channels and their back offices, as well as with payment initiators as well, who want to be part of that journey. And I think it's just going to completely transform what you can do with the payment, to the extent that the payment piece will go away. We won't consciously think about making a payment, because it'll basically be I can set up a Pay2 agreement and provide my authorisation, and those payments will just happen as and when I do those actions that, according to what it is that I'm trying to do, whether I'm a business or a consumer. And I think it'll just kind of disappear into the background, and then it will be about how do you make things more efficient from a process perspective and deliver better customer experiences, and then what can be done about moving money around kind of in real time from a financial management perspective, or for a small business, for a large business. I think that's going to be truly innovative, and that's when we're really going to see the benefits. So.
Thank you. Look, we've got only a couple of minutes left, so I mean, you've seen how dynamic this panel is. It's fabulous because I haven't do anything, so thanks, guys. There is opportunity for a question, maybe two, if anyone's got one for the panel. Coming. Or you could yell if you want.
Yeah, I can yell. So my name's Ben from Basic, so Demir, I'm not going to ask you a question. So I'm Gen Y, and I still think that 9 times out of 10, when a friend asks me to transfer the money and pay back for something, they give me, can everyone hear me? They provide their BSB and account number to facilitate the payment. I guess what's the role, Katrina, of NPPA or the major institutions that offer PayID as a service to increase adoption of that convenient service, similar to what you get with Beam, a great app for peer-to-peer payments?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, one we get asked quite a bit. So PayID's been around for about 4.5 years. Look, I think we're on a journey. I think it does take time to kind of change some of that customer behaviour. I think increasingly we're seeing a bit of a tipping point though. So we're up to about 12 million PayIDs registered here in Australia. And I think it's both sides of that interaction, because it's not just about me making that payment and saying, have you got a PayID, can I use that to make that payment? Because maybe if I paid you before, I might already have your bank account details, it's stored, I just do it the way I've always done, because why do anything differently? It's also about, on the other side, that if I want to receive payments from someone, whether I'm a consumer or a business, that I'm offering my PayID and say, hey, look, here it is. And I think there is more work to do, particularly on the business side, and particularly for small businesses, because PayID is a great payment option for them, because you can get your money in real time. The person that's paying you knows they're paying the right person. I'm renovating at the moment, and it's driving me insane because everyone uses BSP and account numbers. So I'm on a mission. And I think what's interesting, we've done some research that once people actually use PayID for the first time, they become a convert. And interestingly enough, a lot of them learn about it in the moment when they are making a payment, and particularly when they're paying someone they haven't paid before. And so I think it's going to be a collective journey in terms of what we might do, and we are looking to do some centralised kind of activity coming very soon, so keep an eye out for that. But it's also going to be about what the banks do. I think the role of payment service providers as well, who are using PayID more from a receivables perspective, and everybody in terms of to try and drive that change, because it will take a bit of time. And it's also about, how we get key intermediaries who play a role in the payments process, the likes of a Xero, for example. How do they start to capture PayIDs or when they're making payments or getting involved in that payment process? So
I sense, and I'm going to make this the last question because I sense Carolyn wants the last word on this, and obviously Katrina's tradies are signing up for PID as we speak. So, Carolyn, do you want to kind of make a comment about that question?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Zepto has spun up about 13% of those PIDs, so it's something pretty close to my heart. And one of the things that I think will help drive adoption is the fact that for the first time businesses are starting to look at PID as a natural way to accept payments and a faster, cleaner way than, say, a BPay with fat fingers and 3-day wait period and all that kind of stuff. And one of the innovations that has brought that to the forefront is the fact that companies like Zepto and Maneuver and others have started pooling or mining PIDs and can spin up. This week we had a new merchant on board and we spun up 100,000 PIDs in under an hour. So that's possible now. Whereas when PID was released, its function initially was peer-to-peer payments. Only 10 PIDs can be spun up in under any given minute on the NPP infrastructure. So we constantly mine them and pull them in the back like a leaky bucket. So now it has an enterprise functionality to it, which will drive adoption.
I'd love to offer some more question time because I think there'd be some more questions, but I can't because this is a speed dating session on the real value of payments. I'd really like to thank the panellists. They've just been amazing. I'm pretty sure they'd be happy for me to offer them up at a break for a question if you've got one. But from my perspective, really like to thank them for their contribution and to thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it.